Hello, and welcome back to the Compiling CS. This week we're talking all about algorithms. And so we want to make sure that you get a chance to see what is an algorithm and how do they work. So algorithms are actually these step-by-step instructions that are used to help you create or complete an actual task. Algorithms are used in calculations and problem solving all across the world and even with and without a computer. So we want to use algorithms today to see if we can create a really simple game to help us go and understand what that looks like, because even game designers use them as well. So let's see. The first thing we want to do is to create a game. So what is our goal today? We want to be able to create a game to score points by catching as many asteroids as possible with our spaceship. Okay, so tells us we need a spaceship around here somewhere. Things to know. So the spaceship can only move left and right and is controlled by the player. Okay, good to know. Next, the points are scored when a ship is touched by an asteroid. Okay, also good to know. So we need to make it a program and uh, a game that allows the player to actually control it, the spaceship. And they're looking to try and score points by having the spaceship touch the asteroids. Okay, so things that we need to figure out. How do we give the player control of the ship? And how to create the flying asteroids themselves. And then lastly, we really need to think about how do we go about tracking and keeping score? Okay, so with that being said, let's see if we can set out a plan. So remember, when we talk about our algorithms, we have to figure out a few things. So what are going to be our step-by-step instructions to complete these tasks? Now we have more than one task, so we may have more than one algorithm to actually make those things happen. So remember, those algorithms actually are there to help complete a specific task. So in the first one, we need to see what we can do about getting some of these things done. So here's our plan. First thing we're going to do is to be able to set those sprites. So we need to get some characters on the screen. We need to get those things that are involved. So we know for sure one of those is a spaceship, and we know the other is going to be our asteroid. So we need to get those set on the stage. Second, we need to be able to give our player control of those sprites using the arrow keys. So in this case, we only need to control the spaceship, so we need to be able to do that. Number three is we need to get those asteroids moving. What is it going to do? How do we make that happen? Then the next thing, we need to make them interact. So if they do happen to touch each other, something needs to happen. And we should be able to get it to give us some points. And lastly, we need to be able to track the score. So now that we have a plan in place and we have an idea about what we need to do and how we need to do it, let's see if we can go ahead and get some of those things ready to go. If you look in our starter project here, we already have one sprite that's ready to go. Here's our rocket ship. Simple enough. Next, we have our backdrop here. And in our backdrop, we have our stars, our space already ready to go. So one of our sprites is already set up. So we have our spaceship. So let's see. The second thing that we'll need to do is to actually add our second sprite here. So that sprite would be our asteroid. And so I'm going to go and add a sprite from this menu here. And then what I'm going to do is to actually search for, I think I'm going to use for our asteroids, let's use the ball here. So this is going to be our asteroid, and we're going to make sure that it can actually fly and move around in order to help us score some points. So I have my rocket ship and I have my ball. So what I'm going to do is actually go back to my plan here, make sure we have it. So for our first part, we have our sprites, and they are set on the stage. Nice. Number one checked off. Number two, now let's give the player control of using the arrow keys. So we want them to control the spaceship sprite. So let's click the spaceship under here, making sure that it's selected. Now that we're inside of our spaceship, we want to do a couple things here. So the first thing we want to do is to give control. So we know it wants to go left and right. So if I scroll over here and I want to find the events space here, and I want to look for when blank is pressed, blank key is pressed. So I want this particular one here. So instead of the space bar, I actually want to use the left and right arrows. So let's start with left, And then what do we want it to do when it moves left or right? So in this case, I'm going to start with the left, and then since we know it's going to be pretty similar, we can actually use that to be able to do our right arrow key. So in this case, we have when the left arrow is pressed, what we want it to do is to be able to go, I want it to be able to move to the left. So let's see. If I go to my motion blocks, here we go. We want to move 10 steps. Okay. So right now, if we look at it, we can test it. All right. And I don't have to click the green arrow because right now this will work as soon as I press this key. So if I press the left key, we see it's going, wait a second. It's going to the right. So we want it to go left. So instead of going positive 10, we want it to go a negative 10. So let's see if that fixed our problem. So now when I press the left key, okay, we're going left, but it's moving kind of choppy. So in case the way for us to fix that is simply if we go to our control, and if we can add a forever, let's see if that works for us. So we want to make sure that move goes inside forever and see what happens. Okay, so now if I press the left, oh wait, it just keeps going. So we might not want to use forever. However, what else could we use here? Well, in this case, let's see if we can actually use a repeat until. Okay, so repeat until. All right, so this is going to actually repeat until a certain condition or situation happens. So let's figure out what our condition should be. So let's say uh, we want it to be able to work until that key has stopped being pressed. So let's see. We have repeat until key is pressed. Well, wait, we don't want it to be pressed. We want it to not be pressed. So let's see if we scroll down to our operators here, and let's look for the not here. So instead, I'm going to say repeat until this button is not pressed. Okay. So we're not talking about the space bar. We want to change this to our actual left arrow key. There we are. So now, when the left arrow key is going to continue going, and as long as it's pressed down, it is going to continue work. As soon as it's let go, it should stop working. So let's test it out here. I'm going to move this over, our sprite over, and test it out. So I should now be able to press the left key. Oh, nice, nice. Okay, great. So now we have our left key working. So in a way for us to help this out, now we can actually shortcut duplicate. So we know most of these are going to be the same commands. So instead of it being the left arrow, now let's change our button to the right arrow. And one other thing we need to change, if we changed it here, we also need to change it to say repeat until not not right arrow is pushed down. So, and in this case, we also know we don't want it to move negative 10, but we want it to move a positive 10. Okay, so let's see if those changes work out for us. So let's test it out. Here we go. Right button. Nice. It is working. Good to know. Left button. Nice. So the player now has control of the spaceship. Great. Let's see. Go back to our plan. So number 2 has been checked off. We have given the player control using the arrow keys. All right. So next up, part 3. Now we need to get our asteroid moving. So let's see, our asteroid is our ball sprite. So let's make sure we're selected there. And what we want to do here is to be able to say we want our asteroids to come from the top up here. So the first thing I want to do is move my sprite up to the top, somewhere around here. And I'm actually going to change the size of my sprite. Those are pretty big. So let's see if we can do maybe make it 30. And on your game, you can choose to make it whatever size you'd like as well. But it being pretty small is pretty nice. So in this case, now that we have this here, I want to actually see if we can get this moving. So the first thing we want to do is we know that we want to be able to have more than one of these happen at a time. Right now, we only have one. So we need to actually do something special with this, and we want to actually create clones. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is when the green flag is clicked, the first thing we want to do is to actually create a clone. So we're going to pull out the create clone of myself button. So that's the first thing that we're going to do. And then we also want to pull out this event that says when I start as a clone. So to understand what's happening here, when the green flag is clicked, it's going to clone itself, right? And what we want to do is once it's cloned itself, we want to tell the clone what it can do or what it should be doing. And so we do that by using the when I start as a clone event. Okay, so let's test this out here and see what happens. So I'm going to bring this back out just so we can see what's going on here. And if I hit the green button, I now have two of these. It's cloned itself, right? I haven't told it anything to do, so it hasn't done anything. But now you see what's happening. So we want to be able to clone this and and have these do a couple of different things. Well, the way that works is here. Okay, so let's hit that stop button. So excuse me. So here's what we want to do. Once it actually is cloned, then we want it to actually be able to move and move across the screen as if it's flying across the screen. So the first thing we want to do is go to our motion, and we want it to actually do instead of move, we can actually, well, let's try the move and see what happens. So let's test it out. So we're going to create a clone and then have it move. It moved 10 steps, but look which way it's moving. It's moving to the right. We want to actually see if we can move these from the top down to the bottom. Remember, we're going to start up here and then have our clones come down. Okay, so let's move this out the way. This one might not work for us. What we do need though, what we do need to do is maybe use one of our motion tools, and we want to actually change, remember X goes horizontally and Y goes vertically. So we want to change our Y position. So there's a button block over here that is the change Y by. And so this changes Y by 10. If we do that, let's see what happens. Okay, so I'm going to stop that, and we're starting here, and then we're going to hit the plus button. Oh, notice it went up. Okay, well, we're starting up here. We want to go down. So let's change this to our negative to make sure that it actually works out. So now we're going to change it by negative 10. Okay, so let's hit our stop button, try it over again, and hit the green button. Nice, and now you see it's coming down. That's great. Okay, so we want it to continue to go down. So let's see if we go here to our controls section, and we want to hit a forever. Okay, so I'm going to bring that out, and we make sure that forever is now there, and we want to change that into forever changed by negative 10. So if we hit 10, hit the stop button, now we hit the green flag. Nice. So now we have it, and it goes all the way down. That's awesome. So we have an asteroid moving. But wait, we need more than one of these, right? So let's see. What we can do is we can actually do a repeat. So let's do a repeat here. So the first thing we want to do is to change out. We have one clone being created, but what happens if we put that inside of a repeat? So now we should be able to create 10 of these and see what happens. So now I'm going to hit the stop button and try it again. Nice. So that's actually pretty cool there, right? So we have quite a few that are happening right there. Great. Okay, well, notice they're coming out at pretty much all at the same time, but that's pretty good. We want to kind of make these random. So what I want to do here is, first of all, notice that we're creating it, but we still have the original here. So the first thing we want to do is get rid of that because that's a bug. So let's see if we can actually get rid of that. So the first thing we want to do is once we've created our clone, we want to hide this. So let's go to our looks and we want to go to show or hide. In this case, we want to be able to hide this after it's being created. So create the clone and then hide. Okay. So uh, let's go there. And then the next one we want to do is we want to be able to show the clones. So we want to hide the original and we want to show the clone. Okay. So let's hit our stop button here and let's hit play. Notice it is not there anymore. Awesome. Okay, but we still see our clones. So that's been taken care of. The next thing we want to do is to be able to have these kind of go randomly. So in this case, we want to change some of our positions as it goes along. So in here, what we want to do is we want to go back to our motion, right? And we want to change our X position. Okay, so in this case, we want to change X by, okay. And then in this case, we want it to be a random situation. So if you go down to operators, you'll see that there's a random picker, and inside here we'll go from 1 to 10, and you can change these numbers. And so we will change these numbers to, I like to choose, let's go with -50, and let's go with positive 150. Okay, and we'll see how that works out. So those are some numbers you can test and try and see what works best for your program and what you'd like to do. So let's hit the button and see what happens. Nice. So now we have a few of these that have come out at the same time. But notice they all kind of came out at the same time. So we want to sort of slow that down a little bit. And notice they're all kind of moving around. And I might even expand this just a little bit to go maybe even to 250. So that way it goes out. Feel free again to try those different numbers out to help you out. Nice. So we want them to kind of come across the entire screen there. It's good to go. So what if we change this to -100 to see what happens? Oh, that's looking great. Okay. So now notice they all stay on the ground here. So let's see if we can fix that. So here's what we want to do. Let's go down to, as soon as these are finished, now we want them to actually be deleted or get off the screen. So let's go here, scroll up here. So we see these say delete this clone. Okay. Well, the thing is, we need to figure out, when do we want them to be deleted? We want them to be deleted when they're touching the edge of the screen here. So let's go to, we'll scroll up here, and we want to look for where it says, we want to go to our sensing situation, and we want to look for where it's touching the, okay, so in this case, let's use this touching. Okay, we wanted that, not the mouse pointer. We wanted to see when it touches the edge. Okay, so we need something to go here. We wanted to check and see if that is the case. And if it's checking, we need to use an if. Okay, so we'll say if. All right, so if it's touching the edge, then we want it to delete the clone. Okay, so let's try that out and see what happens. All right, nice. And now when it touches that edge, it goes away. Let's test again just to make sure. Awesome. Okay, so now we have those going in that space. So now when it goes away, great to know. The next thing here is that notice that we have some of these are all coming down at the same time. Well, we want to kind of slow that down just a little bit. So in this case, let's see if we can figure that out here. So the first thing I want us to do is let's go to our controls. Once again, we're already here. I want this to actually wait a moment or two. So maybe not a whole second. And here, if you didn't know, you can actually put decimals in this space. So if I choose to say, let's say we want to wait 0.5 seconds between each time it creates itself. Okay, so let's see what happens when we do that. Okay, nice. All right, so that's giving us some nice random pieces that go along here. All right, nice. And we want to continue to work with that. That's really good. So even right now, that's a little bit maybe too fast for the first level. Maybe we can do it with 0.75. So that's 3/4 of a second. Got that? Stop it. And again, you can mess around with this, however, thinking about it in your game and what it looks like. Awesome. So now we have this working pretty smoothly as we go along. Here's the next piece. We have our rocket ship moving. We have that. We're going to the left and to the right. And we have our asteroids going. I'm going to set my number of asteroids because I know I want to have 50 asteroids going. Okay, so we'll set that number, and we know we're going to create that many clones, and there should be 50 for, that's a nice long opportunity for someone to be able to score enough points in that way. Okay, so if we go back to our plan here, so we've set the sprites, we've given the player the control to use the arrows, the arrow keys to control the spaceship, and then now we have our asteroids moving. The next thing we need to do is to make them interact. Okay, so here's what we want to do. Let's go to the ball. Okay, we're here at the ball. So now what we want to be able to do is to say, when the ball is touching the spaceship, we want it to be able to do something, right? Okay, so the first thing we need to do is say that would be an if, right? So let's add another if. right under here. So if we did the touching before, so we know how to do that. Let's go back to our sensing. And we'll pull out another, excuse me, we'll pull out another touching. And so that's at the top here. If it's touching, and then we're going to choose the rocket ship, we want it to do something in this case, okay? Well, the first thing we want it to do is we want it to delete. So let's go here and find our other delete clone, okay? Go here and delete this clone, okay? Nice. So let's test it and see what happens. Oh, nice. Okay, so it deletes now. As soon as it sees that rocket ship, it delete up. Let's see. Nice. It deletes. There it is. Nice. So I'm catching these asteroids as they go. Great. Now, okay, now we have them interacting. Nice. Well, hey, we just knocked that one out. Pretty straightforward. Let's see. Now we want to actually track the score. Well, let's see how easy that is to do. So the last thing we need to do here is to get our score happening. Well, in order for us to do that, we need to create a variable. So let's create a variable. And let's go down here to our variable side of things here. And it says variable, make a variable. So click the make a variable button, and you want to title this score. You want to make sure it's for all sprites. Okay, click that OK button. Now we're here. So now you have a score button here, and it shows up at the top. This is our variable, and a variable basically will be the placeholder or the place that holds our information for our score. As that score goes up, it will keep track of it, ready to roll. So in this case, now we want to pull out an event, and in this event, we need to have when the green flag is clicked. So when that green flag is clicked, we want to be able to start tracking our score. So the first thing we need to do here is when the green flag is clicked, we want to first of all go to our variable here, and we want to set our variable equal to 0, and that's score. Now, when the green flag is clicked, we set the score equal to 0. Okay, so that helps us out. So every time we get ready to start the game, we'll start back at 0 and we won't be starting again. So the next thing we need to do is let's go to our ball, and here we want to change it. So every time that it touches, we want to add 1 to our score. So we have this change variable by 1. So I'm going to move this over here, and we're going to have it here. We have the delete our clone, but right above that, we're going to have that score change. So now we'll hit the stop button and hit it again, the green to test it. So now when I touch the balls, we should see our score go up. Okay. Oh no, so it's touching, but it's not working. Let's try that again and see what's happening. So let's debug and see what the issue is. Okay. So we added the block, but we didn't change it to what it needs to be. So that's a quick, easy fix. So let's change it to what the program needs to know. What variable do we want to change? And notice now it is actually giving us a score. So anytime I hit a actual asteroid, or I'm able to pick up an asteroid, it picks up my score. Nice. And so also when I hit the stop button and I get ready to hit the green flag again, it should start back at 0. Nice. And there it is. Guys, we've created a program that now tracks score. So let's check our plan and make sure that we hit everything that we needed to. The first thing was to be able to set the sprites. We did that. Give players control using arrow keys. We did that. And 3, get the asteroids moving. We did that too. Number 4, we made them interact. They're ready to go. They're definitely talking and interacting with each other. And lastly, it was time for us to track our score. And we've just made that happen. So with all of those things, I think we were able to meet our goal of creating a game to score points by catching as many asteroids as possible with your spaceship. So here it is. You guys are ready to go and see if you can actually start to score your points. Think about it this way. You now have created several different algorithms being ready to go, some complete tasks, and be able to create a game for yourself. What would you do to change this game? What would you do to make it better? What are some things that you still have questions about in terms of how you would maybe do something differently? These are all things that go along with learning the code and figuring out different ways to do things. Are there other ways that we could have done the things that we did today? Check it out and try your best. If you're still interested, there are some other things that you can also do and some other resources you can use as well. So check it out and we'll talk with you guys later. Enjoy. Have a great weekend.